Hi everyone, good Friday. Today we are going to talk about human overpopulation, probably the most controversial issue of this class. So I hope that you will enjoy my presentation. This time around, contrary to the one of veganism, I decided that was better to include data in a way that I can share them with you while talking because I understood that probably was annoying in the last class to hear me mentioning data without showing them directly, but asking you to check them on Canvas. So this time around, I wanted to include the data inside the presentation. So I will use slides in order to make more clear the content of this specific lesson because it's a difficult one, is a controversial one, and I really want you to form your own ideas basing on facts and basing on some specific referment, so you can be clear also when you talk with other people and when you reflect by yourself on the issue, thanks to a very clear and straightforward presentation. So that's what I'm going to do, and I hope that you will enjoy it. So, to begin with, to start our conversation, I decided to present a sentence from David Attenborough, one of the most famous British naturalist and documentarist and presenter. And he says that all our environmental problems become easier to solve with fewer people and harder and ultimately impossible to solve with even more people. Why so? Because if you know just a little bit about population ecology, and if you know how does ecology works, you should know that at the end of the day, in every ecosystem there are finite resources, and every species, every population, every group that exceed the potentiality, the carrying capacity of a specific land, of a specific ecosystem, then will pay the price, because there will be fewer resources, there will be maybe no food, no fresh water, no clean air, and therefore there will be a collapse of the population. We are witnessing it also in real time in many places, in many situations with non-human animals, and we have some data hinting us that this has happened many times also for humans, for Homo sapiens. Still, we live on a finite planet. There are 8 billion humans, and so we need to understand how can we live together on this planet with the growing demand for resources, on a more polluted ecosystem, on a more depleted biosphere, without dealing with the problem of the fact that our population, even if slower, is still growing significantly, and with counting the fact that governments are actively in many parts of the world pushing for people to have more children. So, how can we put together the fact that our economy is demanding growth, that our governments are demanding more people for the sake of expanding the economy or supporting the welfare state or supporting the nation, the ethnicity, with very nationalist and racist policies, uh, with the fact that we live on a planet with fewer and fewer species that is threatened by climate change, threatened by ocean acidification, soil depletion, plastic pollution, and many other environmental concerns, in a time in which, however, capitalism is struggling more and more to create welfare for people. And still, we live in a terrible time, in a very complicated time, and we need to demand solutions. So, my question this time around is how can population be. How can we talk about population in a sensible way in a time of ecological crisis? So the first thing that I will do is to ask you, without giving you a straightforward answer, but because I want you to think about it, three different questions. Is population growth an ecological problem? So is overpopulation really a thing? Basically, that's what I'm asking you. Uh, in other words, is overpopulation a myth or a reality? And the other, are 8 billion humans already a lot on a finite planet? Yeah, we can see that there are concrete facts, there are data that can support a straightforward answer. That is the one that we have already many people, maybe not too many, but we undoubtedly have many people, and therefore to deal with our ecological problems is really complicated, if not impossible. But how much of an issue is population? Let's try to delve into the topic step by step. Okay, so the facts that we can pretty much we can potentially agree on these facts. Maybe you find other sources, maybe you will find readings and papers that will entirely reject these facts, but let's say that overall there is a common agreement that the rapid growth of the human population has placed a significant strain on Earth's resources. Some people say it's capitalism, extractivism, is consumption, etc. But all of these factors, all of these potential causes are intrinsically linked to the fact that there are many people on the planet. With the current population of over 8 billion people, the planet is struggling to keep up, and is actually struggling to keep up. Then, undoubtedly, there are problems like unfair distribution of resources that we need to think about, we need to discuss. That's why in the previous lessons we have talked about environmental racism, we have talked about Anthropocene, and why some people prefer to call it Capitalocene, stressing the fact that capitalism is the biggest contributor of environmental degradation, and not just an abstract anthropos, just an abstract human. And the future of demography is not unchangeable. The future of human demography is not unchangeable. This probably is the one we can agree the most, because our political decisions, our political decision when it comes to women empowerment, when it comes to contraception, when it comes to support a certain kind of political struggle for emancipation, for autodetermination, for abortion, all those kind of issues will, in a direction or another, determine the fact that there will be more or less people on the planet. Because maybe for us, the decision of one single woman to abort or one single man to use contraception is not a big thing. But if we think in the scale of 8 billion people, automatically we will see that there are a lot of possible future outcomes if we don't change. If we choose one direction or another, if we choose to promote, for example, women empowerment, or instead if we choose to promote pronatalist agendas. So when we talk about demography, nothing is already written. We have a lot to say about the future of human demography. Undoubtedly, there are trends, and these are actually written. There are trends, but these trends give us a window of opportunity to change the future of the demographic composition of nations, and on the demographic composition of humanity 50 or 100 years from now. Let's move on. Human population growth. Why some people have spoken about population explosion, or population bomb, or overpopulation? Because basically it took until the early 800 to reach the first billion of people since Homo sapiens appeared 300,000 years ago. And then we are at the point in which we add another billion every 12, 15 years. And now we are currently adding 8 million people per year. And 8 million people that are not 8 billion people, not 80 million people that live with a good standard of living. They are not 80 million people that live in Germany, in Europe, in the US. Most of these 80 million people are born in conditions of misery, and a condition of where life is particularly precarious, in conditions in which rights are not something that we can take for granted. So it's really important to think that not just about how many people we are adding in the world, but their living standards and where they come from, and where they're going to. This is really important because you will see that the movement of people is directly connected to the number of people, and many authors worried about the fact that mass migrations are directly also connected to the number of people that we are adding each year in the world. And so there are many possible interpretations of this phenomena, some that are more progressive and leftist, and some that are more conservatory, that want people to born just in some countries, just from some specific groups, and they don't want people to move, to migrate for a better future, or to migrate because of climate disruption and other kind of crisis. But we need to keep in mind that even though now the population is growing at a slower rate, the fact that the exponent is smaller doesn't mean that the amount of people that are added in the world is small, because the base is bigger. And when the base is really big, in this case 8 billion, when we have 8 billions, then it's easier that with a small increment, a small rate of growth results in a significant, substantial increment of people on the planet. So we have spoken before about the fact that projections are not already, they are not like destiny, but something that we can change according to which kind of policies we will implement. And in fact, there is a projection vary widely because of multiple factors. And there is a difference of roughly 3.5 billion people from the lowest to the highest projections. And so it means that what we do matters. It matters a lot, because in this window of opportunity, if we will decide for smarter policies that will promote women empowerment, we will find ourselves with less people on the planet than now. If we will do otherwise, we'll find ourselves with many more people on the planet that we need to accommodate. We need to provide them food, we need to provide them energy, we need to provide them a decent standard of living, because that's what is fair. We need also to think about distribution. We cannot just think about more people on the planet without granting them any kind of right to access to food, fresh water, clean air, and ecological stability, etc. So let's keep this in mind. Undoubtedly, the areas with the highest population densities are not necessarily the one in which we consume the most. So consumerism sometimes, if not most of the time, happens in its strongest form in places with low population growth. So this causes also a kind of imbalance between countries and areas of the world in which the ecological problems are mostly caused by the number of people, and places in which the problem is caused by by consumerism, capitalism, extractivism, and so on. So we need to keep in mind that when we talk about population and carbon emissions, we need to keep in mind the complexity. And complexity implies global capitalism, exploitation, colonialism, injustice, also the kind of injustices that we have faced before, like the one we spoke about when we were talking about ecofeminism and environmental justice. So to say, at the end of the day, it counts a lot, not just how many people, but how these people use the environment around them. So this is something that can never be denied, because there are no easy solutions. We cannot just say we need less people, but we need also people to behave in a more conscious way. We need them to behave better. We need them to be more aware. But undoubtedly, being aware of the ecological limits means also to be aware that we cannot accommodate people indefinitely. We need to have at a certain point a limit, and then stabilize the population, and even better, maybe slightly degrow. slightly or substantially. This depends on your vision of the world, which kind of world we aim to. This graph, it's very useful to understand, for example, the fact that it's important to note that from the point of view of the ecosystem, of the biosphere, it doesn't matter human justice. It matters how many tons of CO2, for example, are emitted in the atmosphere. And now, for example, China is a big contributor, not just because of the fact that it's a growing economy, but also for the number of people. And sometimes you need to keep in mind that no matter how unjust it is, many poor people can have the ecological impact of few rich people, and we should think that this is not just, this is not correct, this is not the kind of world we want to live in. Yet from the point of view of the planet, doesn't matter the distribution, it matters just the consumption. So we need to, from one side, keep in mind that we need to deal and to respond to ecological instances, but on the other side we need to respond to social justice. This graph, this representation that I don't like too much, because I think that is oversimplistic, but it's useful to give a perspective to what we are talking about. Because you can see that if you will live with the standard of living of the US, for example, all the current population will live with the standard of life of the Americans. We will need more than we will need basically 5 planets. And if we will live like the Australians, we will need more than 4 planets, and so on. If we will live like here in Italy, it will be almost 3 planets. And if you will live like in India, well, we will live, we can accommodate all the population, and we will still have some resources on the planet left. The truth is that now we need almost 2 planets, considering the average. And as I said before, unfortunately, the average is not representative of the injustice that are in the distribution of resources throughout the world. Throughout the economic system and the economic history of the recent years, at least. However, we need to, I said recent year, but yeah, we need to give an historical framework. What I meant is that when you talk about the distribution and how we arrive to destroy the planet, we destroy the planet, I mean destroying the biosphere, not the planet itself. We need to keep in mind that there is no one single history of humanity, but multiple histories. And yet, when you have to count, when it comes to the ecology, we need to also keep in mind that there are a limited number of people that this planet can host. And this number is intrinsically related to the technology and the kind of consumptions and choices we decide to do in terms of lifestyle. The EPAT equation is really important to understand even better the connections between the number of people and the standard of life. Because as I said before, and I will never stress it enough, what it counts is not just how many people or the consumption level, but it's the consumption level, the number of people, and the technology we are adopting. That's why most of the people, especially eco-modernists, will tell you that what we need to do is to push for more technology, because technology will fix all the problems. Because basically it's difficult to intervene on the other two, and because in the first case, the one of population, we need to tell to people that they need to have fewer children. And when it comes to affluence, we need to tell to people that they need to consume less. So both population and affluence are about people choices, and we don't want overall to tell to people what to do. Therefore, the easiest way to address the problem without bothering anyone is to work on technology. But there are limits in how much technology can effectively shape the total impact that we have on the ecosystems. And despite technology plays a major role, it doesn't mean that it can play a solitary role. It needs to be connected to the population, to the affluence. And because both affluence and population are factors that are projected to grow, we need to do something about it. Unless we believe that technology will solve everything and will solve everything at exact the right time before there will be an ecosystem collapse due, for example, to climate change, of excessive biodiversity lost with the sixth mass extinction of biodiversity. What else? What else? System mass extinction of biodiversity. We will dig into this topic in the future lessons. I think that probably already in the following one on Monday we will talk about extinction, but we need just to say at this very moment that the current rate of extinction is more than 1,000 times higher than the current than the background rate of extinction. So basically, normally biologists have estimated that species tend to go extincted at a certain rate without major external factors like asteroids or volcanic supervolcanoes eruptions. But at the very moment, humans are a kind of asteroid that is decimating life on this planet and diversity. And so now the current rate of extinction is 1,000 times higher than what we should expect normally. Most of the animals, wild animals, have vanished. And at the same time, human population and the population of animals that we are eating and using and farming instead is increasing exponentially. So we have seen an incredible explosion in terms of human numbers, but also an incredible explosion in terms of domesticated animals and livestock. And this is strictly connected to what we have spoken about in the previous lesson when we say that veganism is part, at least, of the solution, at least to a certain degree, at least in the moment in which it's criticizing the fact that we are converting all the biomass of the planet into food for one species, that is us. So this is still a number directly connected to the one of before. Livestock and humans represent basically the majority of vertebrate biomass on this planet, and this to me is probably the most concerning problem of our time. I will try to talk about solutions when we will talk about rewilding. For now, keep it there, this information, and we will explore it in the further lessons. As I said before, this graph can allow you to better understand the problem that we have also with the animal consumption. There is a double overpopulation, the overpopulation of livestock and the overpopulation of people, and they go hand in hand. So humans and livestock overpopulation is a problem, but there are solutions to solve this. Yes, there are solutions. We are not here to mention all the solutions, but solutions are effective, are possible, they exist. One of them is to change, for example, our diet, is to take into account new technology for food production when it comes to livestock. And when it comes to people and the number of people, what we need to do is to fight pronatalism, aka the ideology that we need to produce new people, and if we are not generating new people, if we are not parents, if we are not mothers and fathers, we are failing our role as humans, because the role of humans, according to pronatalism, is the one of reproducing. But reproducing cannot be something that we do automatically without thinking about the consequences, and we cannot do it without thinking about when we want to do it, at which conditions, in which word. It's much more complicated than this. You can read something about it in the material that I gave on Canvas and in the readings that I gave for today. Another important issue, you will find all the information that you want on this subject in the website of Population Matters. I will show you right now, share screen. You can see, for example, here, Population Matters, take the issues, the solutions. You can go on solutions and see that there are many solutions. This is a great page, or another one is population balance. Is a great website as well. But you can start, you can find this material on Canvas, go and check. You will find some of the most commonsensical things that can be done to bend the curve of population growth. empowering women and girls, removing barriers to contraceptions, um, increase the number of education, because education is directly related to the number of people, of children we decide to have. And there is also for sure going for a more just economy. So there is this kind of economic dimension about escaping poverty, because poverty is historically related to the fact that people decide to have more children because the conditions are more precarious. Or, for example, by educating our society to having the choice about when and how many children we should have, and not finding ourselves blocked by laws that, for example, forbid contraception or forbid, for example, sexual education. Undoubtedly, these are controversial issues, especially if you have a very religious background. I don't say that you should 100% agree with what I'm saying. You can have a different point of view, but undoubtedly, it is a fact that if you want to bend the curve of population, the fastest and easiest solution is the one of going for a much more substantial empowerment for female. And this is something that resonates a lot with what we have explored during the class, during the lesson of ecofeminism. So I think that at this stage that we are toward the end of this seminar about environment and society, you can see that many levels of complexity tend to reconnect at different levels. You can see the intersection of different issues. You can see how much food production and people reproduction are all connected, how much capitalism and extractivism and anthropocentrism at the end of the day can influence the agenda of governments, and how the agenda of governments will influence the way in which we eat, the way in which we make families, in the way in which we, for example, decide at the end of the day to consume and to define our life, not just as a subject, but also as ecological subjects. So our impact on the planet depends on many different aspects. So nothing, no aspect of our existence is aside from the ecological existential dimension. That's why when we talk about ethics, we are talking about us, both as individuals and as communities and society, as a global society. And so when we talk about ethics, we need to take into account what we eat, and also the most intimate aspects of our life. For example, how we decide to make a family, at which conditions, and at which cost, and so on. So I think that this was a very stimulating for me occasion to talk about a very complex but pivotal issue, and I hope that was really interesting and clear also for you. I cannot wait to read your opinion about the subject, and um, I really hope that you will decide maybe to address this topic in your final, because I think that there is a lot that can be said and a lot that can be explored. So it's really up to you, but this is an hint. See you next time. See you on Monday. Bye.